Hello and welcome to Studyiqcom. I am your friend Rahul Saigaunkar. I hope you are all in good spirits today. We are going to talk about national monetization pipeline in today's discussion. I'm quite sure you must have heard about the NMP. It was announced in last year's budget. In budget 2021-22 speech, the Finance Minister of India, Nirmala Sitharaman, announced national monetization pipeline, a plan for monetizing assets worth 6 lakh crores. In this particular discussion, we'll understand what is this NMP? What is NMP all about? Is it privatization? Is it disinvestment or is it divestment? We'll understand the plan of action of NMP and what were the targets set in last year's scheme. Because this year there has been an update. This discussion is regarding the progress report of National Monetization Pipeline because the scheme has crossed the targets. In the discussion, we'll also talk about some of the issues that were highlighted when the NMP was announced. What were the potential problems towards monetizing the assets in India? Some of the fears have been allayed right now because the scheme has crossed the target, but still we need to follow a cautious approach when it comes to monetization. So here we'll talk about NMP and its progress report in the last 1 year or in the last 7 to 8 months. That would be the agenda in this discussion. To get to know information about this, stay with me on Studyiqcom till the very end. And if you're preparing for competitive exams like UPSC Civil Service Examination, State PSC Examination, SSC or Bank Examination, do visit our website Studyiqcom. Alternatively, you can also download our app from Google Play Store where you'll get all the information about our courses. These courses will help you in enhanced preparation for competitive exams and they will of course increase the probability of you clearing the exam. And do remember, there is a SSC and Bank combo smart course flash sale going on. Why? Because we are celebrating more than 2,500 selections across different exams. Right? You will get both these courses just for rupees 2499. Use the combo code Rahul Combo, all capitals without any space. Use this particular code. Although it is saying valid only for today, but do remember this offer is valid till 18th April, not just for today. Right? Just remember this. Use the coupon code. Avail the discounts. Right, let's begin our discussion with first understanding what is NMP, National Monetization Pipeline. As I told you, this was announced in last year's budget by Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman. Niti Aayog's approach papers are already here. Volume 1 Monetization Guidebook, Volume 2 Asset Pipeline. They have given details of National Monetization Pipeline. What is this National Monetization Pipeline? The framework of monetization, it clearly defines that we are not selling the assets. Now, see, government has many assets. It has, say, roads, it has ports, it has the public sector enterprises, or it has some companies, it has railways, right? So basically, national monetization framework or national monetization pipeline is divestment, right? It is not disinvestment, it is not privatization, but it is simply like leasing out your assets to private sector. Please remember, monetizing of rights take place, monetizing of ownership is not done. Assets that are with the government are handed to the private sector. Say, imagine I am an interested private party and I want to handle a port which the government was owning or which the government is owning. So I will take the port for lease, say for 10 years. For 10 years, I will be operating the port and I'll be getting all the profits from the port and I'll be paying some annual gratuity or whatever is decided, whatever is the contract or the transaction decided between me and government, I'll pay the money to the government. That is monetization of the asset, right? Apart from this, brownfield de-risk asset would also be monetized, right? Whichever are getting tougher for the government to handle. You might have a question here. Sir, why would the government give its own assets to be handled by the private sector? Now, we all know that the government in India, it has entered into many sectors, or before 1991, it was already in so many sectors. Now, the government is slowly and steadily trying to remove itself from various sectors. We know that, right? And that is why we are trying to monetize these assets through leasing out, through monetizing assets, through giving de-risk asset to private sector so that stable revenue comes not just to the government but also to the private entities. Through structured partnership and defined contractual works, some assets would be monetized. Please remember, the ownership will not be transferred. It will just be leased out for the transaction life. That means at the end of transaction between the private party and the government, the ownership will come back to the government. Now, what assets would be monetized? Now, in this pipeline, you will see road, transport, highways, railways, power. For maintenance, they would be given to the private party. Private party can charge, for example, if there is a road. Now, if I have to monetize it, I'll just give the road to the private sector who will be responsible for monetization. They'll collect the toll charges and they will pay whatever the amount is decided to the government. They will also make profit. The government will also monetize this particular asset. Roads, railways, power transmission lines. We already know there are many discoms, there are many corporations which are working. Then there are natural gas pipelines, telecom services, warehousing, even stadiums would be given to private sector for maintaining, right? Ports, aviation or airports. I told you mining is one of the example. So these can be monetized. That's the plan of action. You can always refer to this in the Niti Aayog documents. You will get a lot of information, but I think from exam perspective, this is more than enough. Now the question is, what is the potential of this monetization? According to government, by 2025, the potential would be around 6 lakh crore between FY 2022 to 25. 6 lakh crore would be monetized, and the top sectors to be monetized are road, railways, power, oil and gas pipelines, and telecom. Right? And the targets that they set yearly was in the first year from 2021-22, the financial year that ended, 88,190 crore was supposed to be monetized, and in the subsequent years it's almost double. It's more than 160,000 lakh crores, right? And in the subsequent years it's almost the double figure, right? 1,60,000 crores approximately, 1,62,000, 179,000, 167,000 crores approximately. So when the NMP was announced, there were so many issues or so many doubts which were raised over the national monetization pipeline. I hope that NMP is quite clear to you. But when it was planned, so many people commented on it, and some issues were highlighted. The first thing is that if there is already a brownfield project with the government, why the government is not able to generate the revenue, and how the private sector will generate the revenue? The first question was, how will revenue generating ways be identified? If the government is not able to generate the revenue from its own asset, how will the private sector do it? That was the first question. Apart from that, will the private sector show interest? That was the second question. We saw the slow pace of privatization. Although NMP is not privatization per se, what I mean here is the private sector was not very much interested in Air India, although eventually it went to Tata. With BPCL, the government is finding it tough, although LIC IPO it was delayed many times, but finally it is coming up. But it clearly shows that private sector are one going through some sort of turmoil, especially because of COVID-19. We know that. Apart from that, PPP initiative in railways was already shown or was already floated, but there was lack of private investors here. With respect to power sector, in India, there is a big problem. We know power sector cross subsidization takes place. There are a lot of regulated tariff platforms. And will the private sector come here? Because now they will also be subjected to the power tariff regulation, meaning for the household consumers, the units of power should not go above a certain level. That's what the government mandates. Will the private sector agree to it? The next question about roads and railways or transport sector was highlighted this, whether the private sector would be interested in state highways, whether they would be interested in national highways which are below 4 lanes. For bigger project where the traffic is very much high, they would be interested in these projects. But what about the other projects? What about the district roads, the state highways, the local roads? This was the question. Another question was, the government assets are normally having multiple stakeholders. For example, there is central government, there is state government, there are different corporations. How would the assets be monetized? All these doubts were being cast on the national monetization pipeline. But in the last 7 to 8 months, some of the fears have been allayed for sure. Although many problems still remain. We'll talk about that in some time. But some of the fears have been allayed. Why? Because in the first fiscal year, the national monetization pipeline has surpassed the target. The target was 88,000 odd crores, and now the government has garnered around 96,000 crore by monetizing the assets. Now, what assets have been monetized? In just 7 months, they have breached the target, and according to some sources, it might touch even 1 lakh crore when the additional data comes in for previous fiscal year, the final data. Now, what sectors have been monetized? According to the government data, assets worth 96,000 crore have been monetized, and majority of them have gone to the mining sector. Now, this is a problem. Please try to understand. The road sector, which has heavy potential, the power sector, which has another heavy potential. Apart from that, many sectors we discussed, right? The stadiums, the ports, the airports, the gas and telecom pipelines, telecom infrastructure, the gas pipelines, the power lines, so many things. But biggest contribution has come from mining, 40,000 crore in coal mining, 18,700 crore in the mineral mining. So these assets have been monetized, heavy monetization, around 58,000 crore from the mining sector itself. But nonetheless, we have reached the target. The target was set at 88,000 crore. We have reached the target. The major investors are Canadian Pension Plan Investment Board, Ontario Teachers Pension Plan, Capital Group, Utilico, Emerging Markets Trust. So these have shown interest, and national monetization pipeline, over which many questions were being raised. Some of the fears have been allayed. Private sector is showing interest in this monetization pipeline. But again, the questions that we highlighted with respect to railways, with respect to road sector, with respect to power sector, with respect to other sectors, they still remain. Let us hope that going forward in this fiscal and in the next fiscal and in the next fiscal till 2025, the NMP achieves its targets and it diversifies. Basically, we need the diversification of monetization also. Right now, it is a little skewed towards the mining sector, but as I showed you, we have options of roadways, railways, power transmission, power generation, natural gas pipelines, telecom, warehousing. So many options are available, but very high potential towards this mining sector, coal mining and mineral mining. Right? That is the observation that we have right now. But nonetheless, NMP has breached the target. It is great progress. Some fears have been allayed. We'll keep an eye on this. Whenever an update comes on NMP, we'll talk about that again. Please do note, a potential question can come on national monetization pipeline, critical analysis of national monetization pipeline. What is the way forward? What are the measures through which NMP can be improved further? Such questions can come in the subjective questions, right? Be ready for such things. That is it right now in this discussion. Thank you for watching this. Jai Hind.